Hello my friends, so today I'm gonna show you a 19-hour time-lapse compressed down to something like 20-30 minutes of how this map was created. This map is based off of Google Maps, as you can see by these images. I try to recreate it as best as possible. This is a neighborhood in Poland, and let's do it. Let's tune on some chill non-copyright music. Let's have a look at all the process, how is it that I imported Blender models and how I then went about recreating this environment. And also let's talk a little bit about, some of the stuff that's going around in terms of scripting, all of that. So I hope you guys will enjoy today's video. And so let's get right into it. So here you can see the location on Google Maps. We're going to extract this 3D data using RenderDoc. I've done it right here. So now let's get into Blender. Here you can see the 3D model that I will convert into a prop style with the model doc editor. And then finally, let's go into Hammer, scale it up until we get the proper size. I'm using those cars as references. So here we have our terrace model. And let's begin by creating the shapes of those buildings. Let's line this up, all these cubes. Exactly. So this way I make sure that the size, the distances, all of that is accurate. And I'll repeat this process with all of the different houses, just to get a rough size, a rough estimate of the different buildings, how big they are, how tall, etc. Okay, done. Now I can delete the 3D model. So let's extend the floor. This is going to be where we are going to be cutting the streets. So I'm going to press Ctrl D after selecting the face, and I'm going to double click on these edges, and I'm going to drag them in order to get the streets lined up as best as possible with the Google Maps 3D data that we got. Now I'm cutting some corners in here, literally. Let's line up these streets as well, these edges, these vertices. Excellent, there we go. And the same thing with this dirt row right here. There's another one down here. Perfect. So now I got the streets. Let's now give them a road texture. Now I know these are dirt roads, so I'm gonna replace it here. And this is just temporary, I'm gonna be replacing these textures down the line. Now let's select this face, press Ctrl D to subdivide it. Double click on the edges to line them up. Let's bring this one up, dissolve this edge. So we only get one face, and extrude it out while holding Shift. Let's do the same thing up here on the roof. Alright, drag this, dissolve these edges, and now select this face, hold Shift and drag it up. Now let's subdivide again. Let's get those windows into place. Excellent. So every time what I'm doing is pressing Ctrl D to subdivide, then I dissolve the edges that I don't need, and then I line them up. And in here we need to extrude this in so that it will match the look and feel of this house. Let's select a few 3D models, for the windows. Okay, and now hold Shift with those faces and drag them in and add the window. And this is going to be our balcony. So same thing, you select those faces, move them, line them up. And let's extrude these edges down. So this is going to be the garage. I'm duplicating the 3D model in the window. Let's add this little sort of fence here for the balcony. Yes. We're gonna add a door up here as it should be, because in real life there is a door over there. I'm rotating it, and the same thing, you just subdivide, then select the faces after you have gotten the structure, and hold Shift and drag everything in. Now let's double click and texture it like this so that it matches again the house in real life. And again, just drag those faces in, and so you get those nice looking windows. Let's change the models here so it's not exactly the same. I'm gonna go into train suit, and I'm gonna copy these stairs, and I'm gonna create a little sort of railing system here. Yeah, something like this would do. Let me line up those edges and get a few extruded outside. Now let's get those gutters for when it rains, and some curves over here as well. It's incredible what you can accomplish when you are adding detail. Things appear a bit sort of boring at first, but then they look beautiful. I'm gonna add these trees, these hedges on the corners. Let's duplicate them, line them up like this. Okay, this pole, the street lights, and let's do the same thing with the house next door. Subdivide, hold Shift, drag up, and then hold Shift and drag in. Let's copy the balcony. Let's change here, using different props. The doors are an air conditioning system, and now we need to texture it with different ones. So I'm gonna be going with this type of gravel texture. I'm gonna change the scale, obviously, make it smaller. A door frame here and there, again those same stairs on both houses. Alright, have a look. Now let's get those garages. And it's usually, a matter of just texturing stuff, scaling it down. This is the way that I like to build, by pressing Ctrl D, subdividing. Back in CSGO this was a nightmare, but now Hammer is such a powerful tool. It's so simple. Now I'm holding Shift and I'm pressing A to scale, then Shift again. In order to scale, you can press E or Q in case you want to drag from the edges, to enlarge like that. So it's just a matter, the transform tools are very, very powerful. So press R to rotate, press E to scale, and then drag from the center. And to duplicate, press T and then hold Shift. Let's add these blocks over here. These models are part of Office if I'm not mistaken. And let's create some nice fences in here. Let's bring in some vegetation, some trash bins. And I tell you, I just love so much map building. It's such a relaxing activity, the recreation of something that's in real life. Now let's line up these edges on the street right here, these vertices, and let's recreate this area. Let's add a nice fence over here, some vegetation, some flowers, some trees that are going to be in the background. Now for the background I'm going to use this texture. It won't be noticeable. And I'm going to also be using these grass models. Those who have an animation they're moving are going to be on the front, and on the back of this area where players cannot access it, the grass is just going to be static. Now let's cut here using the cut tool. What you do is you select those faces and just press C, and then you drag cuts. Let's create the electric lines, selecting a path, particle rope client side, and just click around, change the radius. Let's go with 0.5. Let's keep dragging by holding Shift as usual. Alright, now let's select the entire line and Shift and duplicate it by again dragging it to the left or to the right. Let's keep adding detail to these streets, these corners. Let's bring vegetation to this house. And again, just subdivide it. Select those edges, drag them down. And before you know it, you get a nice, beautiful looking house. Bring some windows, a chimney. Yeah, these windows here, they don't look that good, I know. But players are not going to be able to see it except at a distance. And all of these models, they're part of CS2. Nuke, Inferno, all of those maps. I didn't have to create any other model except, of course, the first one that I extracted from Google Maps. So other than that, it's just letting your creativity flow, because you get everything you need to make a beautiful map. I hold those faces, press E, and then extrude them while holding Shift. Let's delete these edges. And now let's add decals. Now decals are a cheap way to add detail in areas where players are not going to be close enough. So you don't want to use 3D models all around the map, because that would be very, very expensive for players in terms of performance. So that's why in the background the trees that I'm adding are very flat, and the windows are just decals. That is a simple image, no extrusion, no subdivision with Ctrl D or anything. And this will do the trick. At a distance it will look good. So you can see those two-dimensional trees. At a distance, it's not too noticeable. These are just a flat image. Let's bring in some cars, some vehicles on the street. Okay, you can now check out how the street's coming up alive. And now let's build this house. It's gonna be the same process. Now I know some of you guys want me to go back to the scripting series, but unfortunately that's not possible at the moment because Valve keeps updating the scripting system. And so fellow mappers have told me that anything they create gets broken with these updates that we got last month. So every 15 days we got a scripting update. So I'm waiting for things to chill down a little bit. Let's bring in some antennas on those roofs as it is in real life. And check out these houses, how they're looking now. Such stark contrast. Now let's create an arch. Let's move the pivot point and now press R. Let's cut it using the clipping tool and add some vegetation to cover those edges where otherwise it's clearly visible that it's empty, there's nothing there. Let's bring some more vegetation also here on this side, on the sidewalk. And I'm adding this terrace model just to make sure that I get the height, the right way. And this should be a little bit inside, yeah, like this. Let's bring in a fence, and I know I'm cutting, several parts, because remember this is a 19-hour time lapse, probably 20, and so I don't want to bore you, repeating the same stuff of subdividing, etc. Because it really comes down to just knowing a few techniques, and then you just repeat those. So to duplicate, I'm holding Shift, To scale, I'm pressing Q. To rotate, you press R. And if you gotta change the alignment, whether you want the rotation to take place based on the model itself or on the world, you press Tab to change between global and local alignment. Let's go back to Trains 2. I want to bring a 3D model, this one, and put it here. Yep. Nice looking cars. These are all car models from Nuke. Let's create some balconies here. And to merge edges, to select those edges, snap to vertex and then merge. These models I'm gonna replace later. A decal lore as well. This way we save on resources, because these areas don't need detail really. I mean they do, but it's not like players are gonna be close up. It's just gonna be all in the background. Let's replace these models here. Concrete bags, yeah. Maybe with some bricks as well. And it's really just getting vegetation all around. Vegetation does help a lot to bring city maps to life. So let's just copy these columns. Now here's the same thing. Just get those decals, duplicate them for all the houses, and then we're gonna use some vegetation to cover up those areas so it's not so noticeable that it's all the same textures, if you will. Let's create a gate here. Now the electric poles. This also helps a ton to cover up some imperfections that might be present in the map. The more you add stuff, the better, because the less likely is that people are going to pay attention to the imperfections. Let's bring some trees here as well. The most beautiful trees, you know, those that are animated, those detailed 3D models, you keep them on the front, and in the back, just those flat 2D models. Let's see what kind of texture can I use for this dirt road. I like this one. Yeah. So let's use this one. Bring a couple of trucks, you know, trees, cars, all of these in front of those houses. So it's not so evident that these houses are pretty much cubes or blocks with a whole bunch of decals on top. Now this, because players are going to be close to this area, I need to make these buildings, these houses. So same thing. Let's get those 3D models, line them up, you extrude those gaps, and bring the models in. Sometimes you extrude in, other times you extrude out. You add a balcony, let's add a fence, the gutters, all of this. So it's just a matter of adding, you know, lots of detail in those areas that players are going to be walking around. Because in the end, people are going to be busy killing each other. They're not really going to have time to pay attention to every single detail. I mean, I bet that if I were to ask you stuff about Inferno or Mirage, you have no idea that certain items are there. But it does add up to the immersion, to the experience that you're actually there. Let's connect those electric lines as well. And if you pay attention, I'm pretty much using the same 3D models, except that I'm changing their size and the textures that they use, so that way it makes it look different from each other. Let's get a different gate in here. Yeah, check it out. Let's add a wall in here in front of this garage. Some treasure bins. This garden, as it is in real life, you know. Here in real life there's 4 of these little pine trees. These buildings I'm also gonna subdivide, extrude, yeah, because players are gonna be nearby this area. And I always bring that terrace model, just to make sure that I'm getting the height of the doors, all of that the right way. Now I'm gonna be starting to use some decals in here, because players are not gonna be directly in this sector, although I still want it to look good. So I am gonna be using some 3D models. But here in the background, as I go further and further to the back, we're just gonna add decals and more props, you know, like for example this bus, to cover some of those less detailed areas. Create a little path here. And as usual, just line up those curves, those edges on the streets to soften it up, to make it look better, and then press Q to scale it. Couple bikes, and just changing the color of the models makes it look like it's a different thing. Now let's take care of this area. So the same thing, just subdivide, extrude, and bring 3D models. And you know, the first map that I created was back in the day when I was in high school. It was for Counter-Strike 1.6. It was literally our high school. So we had fun with our schoolmates, you know, blowing it up, planting the bomb, and literally destroying the school. Now, if you plan to create your own maps, I suggest that if you live in the US, don't do that. That can get you in trouble because of school shooters. You know, in US schools, unfortunately, there's a lot of school shootings and the like. So I've heard cases of people who got into trouble because they recreated their schools and those maps became kind of popular. And so the principals and the teachers were a bit afraid of the idea of their students sort of picking up a gun and killing people in a recreation, in a map that's a recreation of the school. But other than that, you can make your neighborhood. It wasn't a good map, I tell you, that first one. It was really, really bad, but the illusion of being there, that's something you can't take it away. My friends, they were just so shocked at the immersive experience of recreating your own school into a CS 1.6 map. And by the way, it took me several days to do it, but in the end we only played for a couple of rounds, because in the end it gets boring. Like, those layouts, they don't work. They don't really work. You need to do backfacing, update them. People just sometimes don't realize how much effort you need to put into when creating a map. It's just hours and hours of hard work. Now, lucky for us, with the Source 2 now, this version of Hammer is so much better than what we got in 1.6 or in Global Offensive. Even though there was Hammer++, the old Hammer in Source 1 was such a pain to use in order to create stuff. It wasn't optimal. It was just not a good program. Or the environment, it was so outdated. And I'm also very happy that Valve is updating this version of Hammer in Source 2. Now the lattice modifiers, that new tool that we got, I got to use it on this map as well. Not a lot, of course, just a couple of instances, but yeah, every single tool that you get, it makes your life so much easier. Now what makes Blender and Maya so powerful are obviously because those are 3D softwares, and naturally they have modifiers and all sorts of other tools that Hammer just will never have, in my opinion. But still, with what we got so far in Hammer, you can create amazing stuff. And also the model, okay, so the ability to create 3D models now, it's way easier than it was back in the Source 1. Literally, the Source 1 was such an outdated gaming system, gaming environment, that it was about time we got something new. And with these houses, you see, it's the same process. Just subdivide them. Some of them, just copy them from one another and just edit them with different textures. Now these balconies, I'm going to just be using a flat texture, and I'm going to be scaling it down in order to save resources in the long run, because this is going to be also in the background. And I'm going to be copying these textures. Let's add like a nice gate in here. Now I don't know why anyone would put their car like this, but fortunately for us, it works. Let's get another stair in here, a little fence, a nice looking garden with some vegetation. And the same thing with these other hubs. I would say that diversifying the look and feel of the map helps a lot. It really does. So coloring those 3D models in different ways, shrinking those cars, those vehicles, because again, players are unlikely to pay attention to all of that. And as always, I'm using 3D models from official maps. So I know that there are some workshop maps or even, community made maps. You shouldn't use 3D models from those maps, because those maps are going to be removed from the game, maybe in a couple of months, 6 months perhaps, and just one of those 3D models gets removed from the game, and then your map's not going to work. So when it comes to textures and 3D models, you should use only from official maps, Nuke, Mirage, all of that. Now with textures, it's not going to make your map crash, but it would appear like an ugly purple and pink texture, and those 3D models instead is going to be giving you an error if the 3D model cannot be found. Now you might think that's not a big deal, but to update the map later on, potentially a year down the line, maybe you no longer have the VMap file anymore because you formatted your PC or whatever. Now let me use this placement here on the street. So we paint like this. And now let's bring in some decals. Here where the two roads connect, let's bring in decals to disguise it. And also a wonderful, cheap and effective way to add detail to those streets. Just duplicate them. Now you can use many decals. Here you can see how many I used. Also on those walls, because no wall in real life is perfect. So I have a graffiti here, as it is in real life, This wall, it needs some attention. Let's use now the clip texture to limit the areas players can and cannot access. I brought this car to simulate like there's an accident in here. And let's add some smoke coming out of it. So this way I'm telling players, don't go this way. And let's add more decals to simulate the glass sort of broke, to simulate the broken glass. And here you can see the playable area. This is important that you check, the navigation mesh, because during deathmatch, players are going to be spawned here. That is why I use clip texture as opposed to player clip. Now a lot of plants on those balconies. This is going to help. And a custom sound, so the song music, so a song is heard around here. Now let's line up that radar and use the block loss texture, because otherwise bots are going to be able to see through the vegetation, which means block line of sight. Now let's enable the physics tool and remove the collision from this grass, otherwise players are sort of going to be jumping on top of the grass. Okay, so now let's test it out. Have a look, check it out. Beautiful. I'm very happy with the way this map's looking like. And you see the problem? The bot is shooting me through those trees, those plants. So I need to add that block line of sight texture on both sides. But yeah, check it out. Beautiful map if you ask me. I'm very happy with the result. And there's all sorts of things that can be done to improve this map. You know, you can add sounds, you can add birds, you know, particle systems. You can add, I don't know, an airplane flying to the sky. All sorts of cool stuff. But always remember that the more isn't necessarily the better. Okay, I just spotted a bug down there. There's a missing texture on that house. So folks, there you have it. 19-20 hour time lapse. It was a very nice experience. I really liked it. I'm very happy with the results. Here you can see the comparison with Google Maps. I hope you enjoyed this video. You know, making maps lets go of your creativity. It helps you to relax, you know, to disconnect. I definitely recommend it to you. And the experience of playing a map in your own neighborhood, you know, playing a Counter-Strike map that's made out of your own neighborhood, it's just unbelievable. Your friends, they're gonna love it, I tell you that. So, thank you so very much for visiting. Now, I got in lots of requests from you, you know, in terms of tutorials, you know, for 3D models, for scripting, all of that. I'm gonna be working on all of that in the following weeks. It's just, believe me, I'm really busy, so I don't really have that much time when it comes down to doing the research, because in order to learn many of those things, I need to invest a lot of time, because unfortunately, there's virtually no documentation whatsoever that we can use. And also, with every new update, many things change, and so we gotta quickly adapt. But yeah, I will be starting the scripting series again. We're gonna have to restart it completely. With 3D models also, I'm gonna be trying to dive deeper as well, because I know that you guys are interested in that. And then in terms of map making, I'm gonna try and keep posting videos about that. Potentially another time lapse in the future, the creation of another map. And the subscriber series, I've already gotten lots of requests to feature your maps on this channel. I'm very happy with the feedback that I've gotten from all of you guys. The same thing with skins. If you want me to feature your skins here on the channel, just share them. Let's get the word out there. Guys, thank you so very much for visiting, and see you in the next one. Have a wonderful rest of your day.